happening? Oh, I forgot that I hadn't put my ears in today. Never mind. Okay, so how are we today? It's Friday. Yay! Good morning from beautiful Brisbane, Australia, where it's actually autumn, and in the Southern Hemisphere they're actually celebrating the beginning of spring. It's amazing. My name's Linda. I'm a trauma recovery coach, and I'm also in recovery for complex Ptsd. And I do as much research as I can to help us, not just with strategies, but to help us understand what's happening for us at the brain and body level. Now, for those who've been around for a while, I will be starting the trauma-informed movement class on Monday, and just private message me if you want the link. It will be up later, so I'm really looking forward to that. And it all links into what we're going to talk about today with depression as well. Now, I'm really excited because I haven't found this information anywhere around. It's taken me a bit to put it together and to find somebody in the scientific community that's actually online that is kind of putting the information out there, but they're not. Depression is one of the one of the main things that science still hasn't nailed down exactly, not the cause, but what's happening in our brain at a neurological level. However, today I want to share with you something really special. I've been doing this awareness work. How are you? Angelique says, how are you excited about depression? I'm excited because I've got answers, honey. Answers that are going to help us become more well. And that excites me. It excites me that, I don't know, you're only joking. It excites me that we are not going to have to live with depression for the rest of our lives, okay? Now, what I've come to experience for myself is that depression is a trigger in our brain, just like anxiety is a trigger. So it triggers differently, but it is a trigger. So when the brain goes off, all the I just want to say everything all at once. So think of all the symptoms of depression that you have, okay? If you were to go, right, all these symptoms are happening today because my brain's been triggered into the depression trigger, right? Instead of, we know when our brain's been triggered into the anxiety trigger because the fear, automatically puts our body into fight, flight, freeze. And we know that with the anxiety, it's a real whole, full body thing. And, if we're out, we're perspiring, we can't talk, can't move, etc., etc. Whereas I find that depression for me tends to be, it gets triggered and it's really silent. So before I even know the trigger's happening, I can be frozen, I can be feeling really unhappy, in that dark hole. But the thing is, for me, because I've been doing the inner work for around over 20 years now, I know that the trigger happens in my brain and then floods my body with all the emotions. So even yesterday, I was sitting here and all in my guts, that sounds terrible, all in my stomach area, but it is, it's our gut brain. I could feel all these negative emotions and I went, what the? That's not who I am. But not only is it not who I am, that's not actually how I'm feeling right now. And so because I've done so much work, and you cannot compare yourself to anybody else, and this is why I'm being so, pedantic about this is what's happening for me, is I was able to go, yeah, no, that's not me. I've been triggered in my brain, so I have to honour what's happening, but I'm not buying into those emotions and saying, right, yeah, I feel like crap today. yeah, you know, I want to go fall asleep, etc., etc. I stayed here at my desk working and just moved through the energy slowly but surely, you know, energy in motion. And I was able to help move them along. Now, the one thing that I've finally been able to find a doctor, and she's in neuroscience, and I will find the YouTube video again for you and put a link down below at the end of this. They have identified the part of the brain where if they stimulate it, okay, it gets people out of the deepest of darkest depressions where medication hasn't worked, EMDR hasn't worked, TMS hasn't worked, and more. Nothing has worked. And these are people that are, you know, high-profile athletes and, you know, actually have done a lot with their life. And I'll put the video down below so that you can see what they do in the brain. Now, the big thing is for me that I noticed during her talk is it's the same as anxiety in that when the depression trigger goes off in our brain, the prefrontal cortex is not engaged. And when you watch her video, you'll be able to see the brain scans and see that the prefrontal cortex, right at the front of our brain, is not engaged. Hence why doing the trauma-informed movement is so important for us, because we need to be in that safe space in our own home. We need to be able to have our brain, our mind, and she calls it a mind-brain illness, not a mental illness, it's a mind-brain. And for me, I know we have to incorporate our body. So it's the mind, brain and body and our breath. And when we do that, we begin to be able to take back charge of when it's a depression trigger and it floods our body, our whole system, our whole nervous system with the trigger. And when we look at it like that too, sorry, I'll just go off to the side here. When we look at it like that too, we begin to understand that everything that's coming from the depression trigger then becomes something that I can work towards managing, instead of so many of the quotes out there say that you've got to treat the emotions. Okay, it's not the emotions come from being triggered. And that makes a whole lot of difference. In my world, it's made a whole lot of difference and given me a whole lot of hope and understanding that I can learn to manage this. And that's why I get excited. It's like the more I do the trauma-informed movement as well, the more I engage my prefrontal cortex, the more clear my mind becomes, and my brain then doesn't want to go off and be triggered. Okay, so that's the science part of it, and like I said, I'll put... Night, honey, go to bed. It'll be here, the recording will be here. Okay, so what am I doing? So how am I addressing depression differently? Well, I'm looking at it when the symptoms of depression come that I have. I'm looking at it two ways. One, I'm looking at it from I want to engage my prefrontal cortex and get it all happening in the mind-brain connection with the body and breath. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is it's a mind-brain illness, not a mental illness. The mental illness has so many negative connotations, and it's not. Our brain has been wired, when we've got complex PTSD, our brain has been wired differently in childhood. So we want to take back control of our mind and our brain and our body and our breath, because remember, hypo and hypervigilance, we've been, bodies like this for decades. And we want to be able to teach our prefrontal cortex that it's safe to stay online more often than not, instead of it going offline every time the anxiety or the depression is triggered, okay? And the trigger happens in deep brain space, So we have no control over that, but what we can do is come from the other direction, and we can begin to teach our brain, our body, that we can manage it, okay? Now, I have practical faith. If I want you to apply this to your own personal faith, however it works for you. I found out that two things. One, that scientifically our breath, okay, 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out is optimal breathing. And I started doing this years ago, 1 minute in bed every night. And within days, I began to notice a difference. The second thing is, I heard the original transcription of the Lord's Prayer. My Father, who is as close as the air I breathe, I stop and become aware of you. Big red letters around the word stop. So I've got to stop and become aware of my breath. Okay? That's how it's been, and it's been practical, and now I put it into practical practice with the trauma-informed movement, in order that I'm building that deeper awareness internally. When we've had trauma in our, look at me, when we've had trauma in our childhood, our brain has been so wired so differently, and we keep everything outside of ourselves. We're very aware of what happens on the exterior, and we're also aware of the interior of other people. So if you're an empath, you will know exactly what I mean, because there are often times we understand what's happening inside of somebody else and they're not even aware of it themselves, okay? Because we had to develop that deep awareness in order to try and keep us safe from the people, the adults who are 4 times our size, okay? We developed that skill, all right? So just one step at a time. Now we need to go internally for us and build that deeper awareness, all right? And as we do this, our body, it's like we're giving our body permission just to let go of all the stress that it's held on to for a very long time. I've already covered trauma-informed movement this morning. Now, that's another thing I'm doing, and the next thing I'm doing is I'm differentiating between who I am and the biological neurological response that gets triggered with either depression or anxiety. Most of my anxiety trigger is managed now because I've applied lots of other strategies for that. But the depression, I'm learning how to manage it, all right? So when I feel my particular set of, why is the word just gone? It's Friday. The symptoms that come with depression for me, so when they come, I go, something's happened, deep brain, I've been triggered. That's not who I am. Who I am is somebody who wants to do this today, and I am full of joy, and I want to get back to that space. And so I do different things. I make a conscious effort to say that's not who I am. That's the first thing. And the breath work is imperative. It really, I can't emphasize enough how imperative the breath work is for us because of the hyper and hypovigilance. I will get the infographic for the hyper and hypovigilance so that you can read it and put it down below as well, because it's so important that we understand it really is layered. Our breath work is layered. And even now, if you saw me doing the trauma-informed movement class, you'll understand how we've got to teach ourselves that we're safe to let more and more oxygen into our body. And that's scientific as well, by the way. Science tells us now that they know that we have to be able to let more oxygen into our body. All right, and we're not going to do that without our brain in a safe environment and feeling comfortable and being able to work through it a little bit at a time. I'm working on opening up and connecting with people more to heal the wounds in my heart. depression is something that will make us believe that we have to step back and hide, that we have to stop connecting with other people. And I want to share this with you because I haven't thought about it a lot, but I was talking to my younger son last night, and we were watching this series, and the girls on there, they're young, let's say early 20s, and they're very highly emotional and, you know, going off like a frog in a sock at the boyfriend and that. And my son says to me, "Mum, are girls like that?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Don't I do that?" And he says, "No." He says, "When you're emotional, you go off on your own and you don't talk." And I went, "Huh." So that's a good question to ask yourself. When you get emotional, do you... Obviously, people who haven't had trauma feel comfortable going off like frogs in socks. But I don't. I never have felt comfortable doing that. I'm always, okay, it's emotional, I want to go away and sort it out. But I realise now, to have a healthy relationship, I've still got to be able to reach out and connect at a heart level. So my girlfriend, one of my besties, messaged me last night and said, "Oh, you know, Saturday, do you want to go out and we'll check out this new place, etc., etc." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." Whereas, you know, in the past, I would have put other things first. And I'm like, no, part of my recovery now is remembering that when the depression trigger happens, stop it in its tracks and start reaching out and going, no, the connection is good for the heart, all right? Okay, I know it's bucket loads of information, but take just one thing and apply it to your life. Just one step will make a difference each day. And I can absolutely guarantee it. And journal every night or when it's convenient for you, and make a list of what you're becoming aware of each day. And that's how I began. I don't know, it must be about 25 years ago I began journaling, and it helped me really begin to unpack what was packed inside of me. And even though at the time I couldn't talk about it, it helped me label my emotions. It helped me identify what I was seeing, what I wasn't seeing. And it helped me get it out from the inside. And believe me, I know I get on Facebook Live, but my nature is such that if I could just hide away from the world, I'd be happy. But this is so important for us to have recovery. This information is vital. We are the first generation with this information, and I'm super passionate that we need to be able to practice it in our day-to-day life. We need to give ourselves permission to rewire our brains and use our breath, because it's so powerful. Our breath work is powerful because without our breath, we're dead. That's the simplest analogy. So we want to get in there and we want to use it passionately and go from there. Okay, if I can help in any way, shape or form, let me know. I will put the links down below for the YouTube video about the doctor who's doing the neuro work. And they don't tell us what part of the brain it is because it's part of their work. One day it'll all come out, but for the moment we don't know which part of the brain. They just call it C25, and that's how they pay for their research, is by not, explaining everything to the nth degree. But we know it's there now. All right, thank you all for joining in this week. I love you heaps, and I really appreciate it. Share the video for those that may need it, that are sitting in quiet and don't understand that it's not their fault. All right, have a gorgeous weekend, and I will be back Monday to share whatever comes up next. And if you need any help, please feel welcome to reach out, because I am hooked into a great network of trauma recovery coaches as well, all around the world, that will be able to help. Okay, blessings and dreams, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.